Welcome to African Affairs, a television program on Africa. We are in the studio of DCTV, Washington, D.C., United States of America. Today, my guests are Dr. Suleiman Inyang. Dr. Suleiman Inyang is a professor at Howard University, Department of African Studies. He was a one-time or two-time chairman of that department. And we are honored with his presence this morning. Thank you for being with us, Dr. Inyang. Dr. Alim Hailu is our usual guest and a research fellow at Howard University, Department of African Studies. Welcome again, Dr. Alim Hailu. Today we are going to discuss Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe, as you know, was colonized by Britain. The colony was in a different way. By 1890, a British financier merchant, Cecil Rhodes, obtained a charter from the British government to prospect for gold in the land of what we used to call then Rhodesia. He had his people to prospect for gold. He went to the king Lobengula, who considered that he should go and look for gold. But instead of looking for gold, he went in to acquire lands. It was said that Lobengula got mad that he had to execute one of his lieutenants for not telling him really what Cecil Rhodes was about. Now, the colonization of Rhodesia went on. Their lands were seized. There were a lot of abuses. But as time went on by, this was by 1890, by the year 1980, there was quest for independence. Before this time, before the independence, Smith had declared Rhodesia unilaterally independent, what we call UDI. And the struggle emerged. The struggle emerged in Rhodesia. The two dominant groups were the ZANU, Zimbabwe African National Union, and ZAPU, Zimbabwe African People's Union. Zimbabwe African National Union was led by Mugabe, and Zimbabwe African People's Union was led by Jomo Kenyatta. Eventually, in 1980, they got independence. They got independence, and Mugabe became the president, and Joshua Nkomo became the vice president. These two dominant groups came from different ethnic backgrounds, as we always examine here. Mugabe was a Shona, predominantly more in number, numerically stronger than other groups, about 80%. Ndebele is the group that Joshua Nkomo belonged. Now, they got independence led by Robert Mugabe. Dr. Nyang and Dr. Alim Hailu, what characterized this reign of Mugabe during this initial stage, and how did the situation during the colonial tax impact on the political dynamics of Zimbabwe?
Yeah, like many of the history cases in Africa, the post-independence case studies, Zimbabwe's case is an example of hope and tragedy. When the independence movements in Zimbabwe, as you mentioned earlier on, Zimbabwe was formed from semi-autonomous region carved out by the British when they had formed broken relations from Malawi and Zambia, which were part of it when the federation was broken. In 1923, when they received their autonomy, a land act was passed that deprived close to 3 million members of the African farming community and given to a small minority of land ownership. After that point, land becomes a defining issue of Zimbabwe, a fertile, rich country. And when Ian Smith declared his independence from Africa, the first movement was a multi-ethnic movement which combined Mugabe's and Nkomo's and other groups together. In 1963, in 1965, Mugabe breaks from that, and it becomes ethnicized, politicized, where big conflicts between him and, of course, Al-Mazrui, another faction, but with Nkomo's area. Factions define the conflict. The neighboring countries put pressure on both to unite and form a coalition against the regime. And that loose coalition comes into power with Mugabe's power as the primary partner and Nkomo as the junior partner. Soon after that, the faction and the polarization comes in, where Mugabe's groups attack the ethnic group base of Nkomo, where 20,000 people were estimated to have been killed by, according to a study done by a Catholic Commission study. And against this background, whereas in the beginning Mugabe received a hero's welcome both within the country and the region and the world, as someone who was judicious, who was not vengeful, who epitomized the idea of reconciliation as practiced by Mandela later on. But in the early period, he was supposed to have been a leader who was going to start focusing on the future, where a system of reconciliation between both ethnic groups and with the small minority white population also that owned big chunks of land. The Lancaster Agreement that paved the way for the constitution that was going to be in power till 1990 was supposed to discourage unlawful seizures of land, parliamentary multi-party systems where seats were guaranteed not only to the factions but even to the white minority. But with mismanagement and other conditions that happen in time, Mugabe decides to play the race card and use, when demonstrations against inflation, against many of his policies happen, he comes up by using the minority whites as a scapegoat, where the land issue, which was legitimate, which had legitimate basis for addressing the land issue, was used in a very polarizing and dictatorial way, which was not resolved for 15 years or so, but that became the basis for the problems. Then come the economic mismanagement, where the fertile land Zimbabwe produced enough to feed its people and export 30% of its agricultural products. After this mismanagement come famines, drought, other problems that follow, but this is in a nutshell what lays the basis for what turned a hero who was supposed to have been a freedom fighter into a dictator, into a one-party rule, and the mismanagement we've seen in other parts of Africa and the world.
Yeah, I think when we look at Zimbabwe right now, we have to look at 4 areas of interest, and Dr. Hailu amplify on some of the problem areas that confront the Zimbabweans. One is the political geography of Zimbabwe. Why do we have Zimbabwe? The very name itself is an attempt to bring back the past to the present in terms of political culture of the Sona people. The Sona people belong to 1,000+ ethnic groups in Africa. If you cross the border from Sona country in what is now called Zimbabwe into Mozambique, you have some of the ethnic groups that are living in Mozambique who are Sonas, but they don't carry the name Sona. You see,